Well, hello, everyone. This is our October 4th science, hard science fiction Zoomers group meeting. And our speaker of the day, we are so fortunate to have, is Simon Kregar, a fine artist, a specialist in anthropology who also studied arts management and had plenty of classes in art at the U of A, or maybe more so at NAU. And he also worked previously with the staff of the U of A Art Museum, whom I'm very well acquainted with, and perhaps Olivia Miller, who used for many years was our head curator there. He is such a real valuable addition to this, because I think we haven't had many astronomical artists. We've had very few artists per se in the whole series, but astronomical artists are a special group, and I think they deserve much more credit and attention than they get. So we're working on that, and I think the new George Lucas Museum of Narrative Art will help, because they're breaking down some of these fine art versus other distinctions, other kinds of art. And narrative art is a good way to describe art that tells a story, whether that story be the cartography of the heavens or a story of some other kind. It shouldn't be a different level. It's all good. It's not better or worse, just different than the abstract kind of fine art. So with that said, I will turn it over to our esteemed guest, Simon, and take it over, Simon.
Well, thank you so much, Gloria, and thank you everybody for having me. Wonderful opportunity to be able to talk about this, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions and some discussion at the end. I guess first off, I should kind of introduce myself. Foremost, I'm an artist, and typically I specialize in portraiture and what's been come to known as astronomical art. I was very fortunate in my early career to get connected to NASA and to a lot of the Apollo astronauts, and I've been able to do a lot of work for them and their families. So that's been quite an experience. My background is in arts management, as Gloria pointed out, art history and anthropology. I also hold a fellowship in art and science communication from the University of Arizona, and up until the pandemic, I was actually doing quite a bit of STEM work, or like we artists like to call STEAM work, put the art back into it. I'm a fellow artist, and I'm the director of exhibitions for the International Association of Astronomical Artists. And I'll go into that a little bit more, what that is during my presentation. Let's pull this up here real quick. Oh, nope. And share. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Don't forget to turn off your mics.
Not me, though, right? Not me. Sorry. It's been a while since I've done a Zoom meeting, so I apologize in advance. But so art has always played a really major role in our human story. You know, we evolved as storytellers. I think there's an author named Yuval Noah Harari, who's written a great series of books, one of which was Sapiens. And he talks about the broad strokes of human history and how that really, you know, as storytellers, really delineates us from any other animal on the planet. And that's the stories can take, you know, any form in the arts, whether it be artistic expression, cave paintings, great monuments, or storytelling as science fiction writing. You know, our fascination with the night sky in particular and what lies beyond goes back to our furthest memories and paint on cave walls. The sky, the moon, the stars, and the wonder of planets were supremely important to our ancestors. They told us when the winter would end. They told us when to plant crops and when to harvest. We built huge stone monuments to help predict the seasons and changes in climates. Let's get started here. So in the ancient world, it was really form over function. You know, art was a practical thing that communicated simple messages. Symbols representing clearly astronomical objects have appeared almost since the beginning, almost since the very first efforts of humanity to write. The star and crescent, this example comes from Utah, I believe. I'm sorry, and represents a supernova event that they think happened in 1063. Moon imagery appears on cylinder seals. Unique bronze and gold amulets from Germany feature sky symbols. Star charts were known in Egypt. From 1534 BCE onwards. And the ceiling of Egyptian temples and tombs were painted and carved with neat rows of stars. Ancient Sumerians were the first to record the names of constellations on clay tablets. The Greeks, who left very little in the way of representational astronomical art, not only understood the nature of the universe, but accurately measured the circumference of the Earth within several percentage points. And I'm sure as authors, you're all aware that the first science fiction stories came from Greece as well. This is a piece from Babylon. The king is accepting people to his royal court. And of course, the celestial objects, the sun, the moon, and a star appear in the heavens. Here's that amulet from Germany I was talking about. And from Egypt, the stars above the Egyptian gods protecting the population. Illustrations most assuredly accompanied astronomy and geographical paper texts of the centuries, including the transition to the current era. However, in general, only rare scraps survive. Fire, purges, and post-conflict looting all took their toll on historical records. Much knowledge and, unfortunately, art had been lost to the ages. Certainly, there were great works done in Mesoamerica, Asia, and by the Islamic Enlightenment that are lost to us. But what remains seems to be a jump ahead in time to the European Enlightenment, and that's where we pick up here. This was a time of unparalleled trade, not only of goods, but ideas in Europe. The scientific method was just germinating, and artwork begins to reflect a more refined view of our universe. This is a comet, or a portrayal of a comet. And this may seem a little out of place. This is Galileo, one of his drawings of the moon. I'm reading a book recently on the conquest of the Americas, and I find it very interesting that Galileo was a contemporary of both Columbus and Cortez. It kind of puts it in perspective where in place and time all of this was taking place. Of course, the heliocentric view of the universe. Wonderful sunspots. And this to me represents one of the first pieces of kind of inching away, I should say, from purely representative artwork. I mean, most artwork before this time, before the Enlightenment, really was just representing kings, representing events. It was really fairly static. And this is the first time you start to see, people representing ideas, breaking away from that, lifting the veil of the stars to see what the mechanism of the universe was made of. One of the precursors to astronomical art was a school called the Hudson River Valley School. Where are we here? The Hudson River Valley School was a mid-19th century American art movement embodied by a group of landscape painters whose aesthetic vision was influenced by Romanticism. The paintings typically depict the Hudson River Valley and the surrounding area, and eventually moved on to the Western United States. Typically, these paintings were showed in art salons, in huge rooms where they lined the walls, as one continuous painting. Think of a room in the round where the painting completely surrounded you. It's from this art school of landscape painting that the movement of astronomical art really starts to take its roots. I was fortunate to see one of these by an artist named Thomas Morand of Yellowstone at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And it really is an experience. This was giving people the experience of being out west, of seeing these fantastic environments without actually having to go there. So, okay. So we pick up just after that period with several artists. Whoa, well, we'll jump over here. Well, several artists who start to take those principles found in the Hudson River Valley School and apply them to astronomical themes. You know, what did it look like to stand on the moon? What did it look like to stand on moons of Saturn? There we go. And this is really the first true example of astronomical art, and the first time that an effort had been made to depict the scene from the surface of another world with any kind of accuracy, or at least the accuracy that they had at the time. This is a wonderful scene from one of the moons of Mars. And you can see Mars very much looked like that, you know, those Percival Lowell sketches, because that's the information that they had at the time. But they were trying very hard to get the geology correct. Here's another wonderful piece. Actually, there's a piece photograph that was just taken by a rover on the moon that depicts the same scene. And this is an eclipse on the moon of the Earth and how that would look. There's another one, I believe this is by Chesley Bonestell, a galactic sunrise. This is a scene of Mars done by, I believe, Louis Moreau. And it's interesting to note that they thought at the time that Mars's sky was blue. They actually thought that was true up until the Viking landers landed. In fact, the first pictures that they processed from the Viking landers in 1975, 76, they color corrected to have blue skies because that was such a cultural bias towards that. Interesting tidbit. Is a wonderful piece from one of Saturn's moons, Rhea, from within a crater. And notice that these artists are going as far as depicting the shadow of the rings. They're really trying to get the science down. This is a very famous piece by Chesley Bonestell. Bonestell started as a architectural artist, and took his knowledge of that and structure and his work as a Hollywood painter, a background painter for such famous films as like Forbidden Planet, and applied those to his astronomical scenes, giving it a really, really phenomenal, deep sense of realism. So we widely consider Chesley Bonestell as one of the primary founders of this art movement. This is another phenomenal piece that was done in the early 20th century from, I believe it's Saturn's moon Mimas. And notice the intricate detail of the shadows from the rings. And this is not something that we had close-up pictures of until arguably Voyager or even Cassini did their flyby. So this was really, really way ahead of its time. So, you know, Chesley Bonestell went on in conjunction with the just blossoming interest in the space age and created a number of books and works and magazines, primarily for Collier's magazines, and in conjunction with Werner von Braun to depict what voyaging to the moon, voyaging to Mars would look like in the future. And he was really instrumental in kind of laying the framework to for what follows with the Mercury and Gemini and the Apollo missions. This is a reusable space plane concept from Chesley Bonestell, where the first stage that's being detached here actually has a deployed parachute, so it can drift down and be reused. And we're seeing all of these ideas being used today by predominantly by SpaceX, but definitely an industry-wide movement toward that. There's another, this is one of my absolute favorite Bonestell paintings, the sleek, shiny spaceship. I know Elon Musk is trying to copy this with his heavy, but there's another wonderful painting. Something interesting to note is most of the scenes of the moon that we've seen so far in these artworks are these really rugged, like unweathered landscapes. Whereas when we actually got there, the landscapes were very, very different. So there's a bit of nostalgia in looking at some of these works compared to what came down the line in reality. This is a fleet of ships in a piece for Collier's magazine, traveling to Mars. So really great work, fantastic work. NASA, starting in the 1960s, had a fine art program. And this kind of dovetails again with astronomical art. They had some really famous artists like Robert McCall and Rockwell that did work for them. And a lot of our artists actually got their start working for the NASA Fine Arts program. Some wonderful pieces here. This is a Bob McCall piece. For you, those of you who are not familiar with Robert McCall, he was an artist who lived in Phoenix. Most of his work has been donated to the Art Museum at the University of Arizona, and you can see it with an appointment. Really incredible stuff. So this is a piece by Paul Calais, who was a Western artist at the time. This piece went on to be represented in postage stamps all across the United States after the moon landing. There's a wonderful piece by Norman Rockwell depicting Gus Grissom and John Young getting ready for their Gemini flight. Another piece from Robert McCall. Unfortunately, NASA's fine art program stopped at the time the Challenger exploded. So there were actually several artists in this fine art program that were slated to go up on the shuttle, very much like the Teacher in Space program. The first one was going to be the musician John Denver. And one of my close friends and artist, Marilyn Flynn, was also part of that program. So just phenomenal work. And you can see we're definitely veering away from representational work. Though I think the more that photography started getting a larger and larger role in representing things in the art world, the more we kind of flow away from that. And you'll see that further down the line as well. That's a phenomenal piece there. This is another piece by Paul Calais showing just the power of the Saturn V. There were many Soviet era space program artists, and I can go into that in a minute as well with the IAAA. From the very beginning of the Soviet space program, there were artists, and they are very much, they're very much more impressionistic about their work. In fact, the first man that walked in space, I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm sure I'll remember his name in a moment. Was an artist and one of the first people to paint in space. Oh, there we go. So Carl Sagan, we can't talk about astronomical art without talking about Carl Sagan here. Carl Sagan was a real proponent of the arts, and if you've picked up any of his books, you'll see fantastic illustrations by astronomical artists. And in that spirit, when he created the Cosmos television series, he hired these artists to paint works or to work with to visualize things in the series. Artists like Rick Sternbach, Don Davis, John Lundberg, Don Dixon, and Adolf Schaller. This background, just this simple background in Cosmos here, was created by John Lundberg. And it's very distinctive every time you see it. This is a fantastic piece by Adolf Schaller, depicting hypothetical floating life forms in the Jovian atmosphere. Another piece by John Lundberg depicting the Milky Way galaxy. This is a piece by Don Davis, obviously showing the extinction of dinosaurs. And a piece by Rick Sternbach. Rick later on went along, if his name sounds familiar, he later went along to be one of the art directors for Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Star Trek Voyager. So there is Carl Sagan with Don Davis there. And this is really where the IAAA kind of got started, the International Association of Astronomical Artists, is with this group of people. And we will segue here into the IAAA. The Planetary Society, which many of you know is a space advocacy group founded by Carl Sagan and others, organized an event in California in 1982 called Planet Fest. And it was a celebration of the milestone in human space exploration. Among the festivities was an exhibition of space art where many of the North American astronomical artists, including artists from Cosmos and people like, let me answer this. Light optical paintings, the background paintings, as in the matte paintings for Star Trek The Motion Picture. Is that what you were asking? Those are Robert McCall did those. There we go. All right.
Not the motion picture, the original series. There were some scenes of other planets. I'm trying to think of any offhand where
yeah, I'm not familiar with the artist who did that, except for the general studio artists that were working at the time.
it might have been the same one as for the motion picture. He was
I don't think Robert McCall worked on the original series. I think it was I think it was the studio people at the time. I know there were many science fiction authors that were involved with the original series, but as far as fine artists, the only ones I can think of were Greg Jen, William Ware Thesis, who created the original Enterprise, and a few other model makers. Now, quick segue here, in the Star Trek series, the original, there's a remastered version of that's out, and those are typically what you see. Now, the planets and the backgrounds in those remastered versions are done by Michael and Denise Okuda, who are artists as well and did work for Star Trek The Motion Picture and yada 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 on down the line. So I hope that answers your question there. So going on with,
I don't know if you can see this. This is an example of one of them.
Oh, I can't. I'd have to.
I don't know if you can see that.
Actually, if you could save it until the end,
all right,
it would be fantastic, because I have to negotiate through all these, all my windows here real quick. So let me just finish this real quick. So as these artists get to know each other, and start to collaborate, Dr. William K. Hartman, who's here from Tucson, he was one of the founders of the Kuiper Building and the Lunar Planetary Laboratory. He had a background in fine arts as well, and one of his favorite things to do was to go out and paint what's called plein air, which is painting the scene as you see it. Taking your easel, I'm sure we've all seen somebody take their easel and canvas out and they're painting some nature scene. And he was doing that, but his background in planetary geology kind of dovetailed with that. So he was painting these geological scenes on Earth and putting them on Mars, putting them in different places. So, and he realized that the other artists wanted to do that. So he held several workshops, one in Hawaii and one in Death Valley. And it was at that Death Valley workshop in 1984 that the International Association of Astronomical Arts was founded as a nonprofit in order to promote that. Or for anybody who's lived in Tucson any length of time, you might remember an artist named Kim Poor, who had his work at malls, had his work at at Flandreau Planetarium, and he was one of the founding members as well of, I'll just abbreviate it, the IAAA. There we go. We'll segue into this. And the IAAA artists at the time were a good mix of planetary scientists and artists. A lot of artists came from illustrative work. A lot of work that was done early on was done for NASA, not in the art program necessarily, but as accompanying articles and promotional material. One of our early artist members was astronaut Alan Bean, who walked on the moon. And this is a beautiful piece by Alan Bean. This is a wonderful piece by one of the founding members, Pamela Lee, who did incredible work putting people in these locations, making it personal for the viewer. And you can see how this is definitely transitioning kind of away from, well, actually it isn't. I'm tripping over my words. This is a wonderful piece by Michael Carroll, a small spacecraft traveling over the rings of Saturn, and how that looks. An homage to that Chesley Bonestell. This is a galaxy with probably a supermassive black hole in its center, spewing out jets. This is a piece from Kim Akuda. Akuda. Kuda. Michael and Denise Akuda. This is a beautiful piece by Kim Poor. Oh, absolutely. And most of these are again, they're representing, locations in the solar system or beyond. This is a wonderful piece by Marilyn Flynn. So that was the early IAAA. Now, most of those early pieces and all astronomical art leading up to this point was really based on, what we imagined these locations looked like, because we didn't have the instruments or cameras out there. Slowly, we started to get this information. We started to have, if you will, competition from reality. This is the great red spot taken by the Galileo space probe. The surface of Pluto. This is Europa. Oh, actually, no, this is Pluto again. The rings of Saturn from the Cassini mission. And a moon of Saturn called Hyperion. Jets of water and recently discovered organic material coming out of a moon of Saturn's named Enceladus. So how do we compete with this type of thing? We started to see, our sales drop off. NASA wasn't interested anymore in art because we're getting remarkable photographs from the solar system. Well, we changed gears is what we do. We kind of changed our mission statement and start to explore other areas that can be considered astronomical art. It's a difficult thing to define, and I think we all continue to this day to try to define what it means to be an astronomical artist. I think primarily we're trying to remain true to the science. In whatever medium or style we're painting, we're trying to convey the science and the reality behind our artwork. And in that, Albert Whitcock, yeah. And in that, you start to see we're moving away from that direct representation of what we like to call rocks and balls, planetary landscapes, although many of us still work in that. This is a fantastic piece about the progression of humanity into the heavens by an artist named Lucy West. Oop, there we go. There's another great one of the areas that we still can depict otherworldly scenes are exoplanets, which we've now found thousands of. Going back and exploring our heritage of scientific exploration is another way we can explore the artwork. And this was not to self-aggrandize, but this is a piece done by myself of the large moon models that they had built during the Apollo programs for their simulators. I only worked off of a black and white photograph for this, fortunately, because the real color of the moons that they had done for this program were cheddar cheese yellow. Somehow I don't think that would have worked in the mood of what I was trying to convey. So we do have 2 astronauts that are artists in our organization right now. Ron Guerin and oh, my brain again. It's early. It'll come back to me in just a second. Ron recently published a children's book. So this is a piece by Ron Guerin depicting his first spacewalk and what he felt during that. This is a piece by me depicting a spacewalk. Oddly enough, this is a piece that most astronauts really gravitate toward. I was trying to portray something serene and peaceful because I thought that's what a spacewalk was. The reason most astronauts gravitate towards this piece is because that is the opposite of what a spacewalk is. They're inundated constantly with all kinds of noise and reminders and communications, and all they wanted was a moment of silence to appreciate where they were. So this is what that represents for them. So this is an incredible artist, Ekaterina Smirnova from Russia, who worked with the ESA on their probe to the comet P. Jeremenko. And she was a planetary scientist, and she would create these incredibly large charcoal pieces where she would take the chemical composition from the comet, being methane and carbon, water, and spray it on the canvases with the charcoal to get this certain effects. So it's using the chemical constituents of the comet in her artwork, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. She also, as a side note, had little promotional scratch and sniff cards of the comet. And I can tell you, comets don't smell pretty. So another wonderful piece of Pluto and its moon Charon. So we have artists in all kinds of disciplines. This is an artist from Phoenix who works in chalk. And this was an event we had in Pasadena, California with the Planetary Society. Another piece by Lucy West. We have an artist who is a musician. We have actually several musicians right now. Falkenberg created the Moon Symphony. This is a piece done here in Tucson by Teresa Hentz. Another piece by Teresa. So you can see we're moving away from that direct representation into more of an impressionistic view of astronomy and what fundamentally it means to be a human being in this universe, living at this time. The hopeful near future landing of a SpaceX rocket on Mars. And this is another piece The Earth is a body in space, so it certainly can be considered astronomical art as well. And that's taken from orbit. This is a piece by Jackie Burns, who's out of the UK, who does these wonderful, I don't know quite how to describe this, bubble bubble art. This is a piece from a test pilot astronaut we have, depicting the shuttle just landing in at Edwards Air Force Base in the morning, and back into exoplanets again. Wonderful piece by Michelle Rausch. There we go. And another piece by myself. Galactic web of material throughout the galaxy. And this is a piece by Adam Block, who I think I mentioned earlier is a astronomical, or he is a astronomer here in Tucson that works with the Catalina Sky Survey. He's done several presentations, one of which I highly recommend. It is called Sick Dude, Is That Real? And you can find that on YouTube. I know it's a ridiculous name, but there's a purpose to it. What he's trying to do in his work, and dabbling myself in astronomy recently as an amateur astronomer, I can tell you that there is a tremendous amount of room for artistic input in processing images. And what Adam tries to do is depict these images not necessarily in false color, but as they would appear to the human eye if you were that close to them, which is a very interesting approach. Most images you see, like from Hubble or from James Webb, are in false color because they want to show certain elements. They're trying to delineate between different molecules for scientific reasons. And as beautiful as they are, they're not necessarily representative of how they would look to the naked eye. So this is just a phenomenal, phenomenal piece. Another wonderful piece of art. And there we go. So I'll open it up to any questions. I apologize if it seems a little rushed. I'm a little rusty, but here we go. Let me back out of this.
Well, we want to thank you very much for an enlightening and very entertaining presentation here, which had many interdisciplinary sides to it. Also, a lot I didn't know about you and your involvement with NASA. So, do people have questions that you would like to ask at this point?
Thank you, Simon. That was a really wonderful talk. Thank you for showing us so many beautiful, stunning images. I had a question about sort of science and religion, right? Sort of the heavens are obviously sort of a realm of science, but they're also a realm of sort of the gods, right? And sort of depictions of the heavens historically sort of also sort of had like religious meanings, sort of were expressing religious feelings. So I was wondering to what extent in like modern and contemporary space art, there's also something sort of quasi-religious being expressed in sort of the sublimity of these other worlds.
Absolutely, it is. I think, and you're right, up until probably the Enlightenment and arguably through the Enlightenment, astronomical art was religious in nature, because there was no delineation between, the gods lived in the heavens. The motion of the stars, again, dictated your day-to-day life. The changing of the seasons. It was so paramountly important to those people and integral to their society to understand the heavens and the mechanisms and the seasonal changes, where I think we've grown a little distance from that. I think there's definitely kind of a new movement within science in general, and definitely within astronomical art of replacing, maybe not replacing is too harsh a word, but I'll use it anyway, replacing religion with more of a spiritual sense, with more of a, this deep and profound sense of your place in the universe when you understand not only the scales that are involved and where you are in that, but how precious we are as human beings within the context of the universe and biology and evolution. So I think most certainly, I know for myself, it may not appear that way in a lot of pieces, but I take a very deep, profound spiritual, like if you could call it that, bent on my work. And I think most of us astronomical artists do that as well. So
Wonderful. Thank you so
Could
much.
I'm sorry. Could I just put a little coda to that, because there are atheist astronomers as well. And I think that the kind of neutral term, the sense of wonder that it was used all the time I was in fandom, can cover people at both ends of the spectrum, and you don't have to go fighting over it. So
yeah.
sense of wonder is a good kind of diplomatic one. So I also found, if you can see them in the chat, these Soviet space artists.
Oh,
Were these the ones that you were thinking of?
yes, Alexei Leonov was the first man to walk in space, and I completely forgot to mention that. If you'll indulge me real quick, there's actually a book written by William K. Hartman and Ron Miller called "In the Stream of Stars." So IAAA was founded in about 1984. They knew about the Soviet space artists. In 1987, the Soviet space artists reached out to the IAAA, and they held several joint workshops during the height of the Cold War. IAAA members were invited out to Moscow, to Star City, to paint with these artists. And conversely, there was a workshop in Iceland where the Soviet artists came and painted with the American artists and collaborated. And then another one in Death Valley in 91, I believe. The book, again, In the Stream of Stars, if you can find it, is an excellent, excellent telling of what transpired. And there's some really remarkable collaborations between the Americans and the Soviet artists. One of the ones that sticks out in my mind, which I find amusing, is that they were painting at the Grand Canyon. Bill Hartman actually tells the story. And the Americans were very happily all painting their plein air. And about half the Russian artists were painting their scenes. And the other half of the Russian artists were just imposingly standing behind their artist's counterpart, making sure they didn't get out of line. So it was a different world back there, certainly. But yeah, if you can, check out In the Stream of Stars. So.
Well, are we doing anything at all collaborating with Russian artists these days?
Well, insofar as the IAAA goes, we do. We have Russian artist members. We have artist members from Pakistan, Africa, all over the world. And we collaborate on our projects with them. Aside from our organization, I don't know that there are other, I mean, certainly there's artist collaborations happening all the time, but I don't think there's any organized artist collaborations happening for a very, very long time. And I was talking to Gloria about this earlier. Our art subject, our what we do was considered illustrative art instead of
Yes,
fine art.
yes,
So
right.
we've had quite a struggle to get it represented properly in the art community. For example, if you look up space art in the context of the art community, that's defined as artwork that has been flown in space. Doesn't necessarily have to be that subject matter. It's just work that had been flown in space. Oh, thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Chris. So, astronomical art is the same way. It's an elusive beast as to try to define it. But I think Matthias really hit the nail on the head that it is that sense of wonder now that we're trying to portray, to use the term a little more correctly, that sense of awe combined with the scientific realism. So.
Are there any other comments or questions? I see people are beginning to peel off into their Saturday.
I think Einstein says somewhere that who can no longer look at the world with the sense of wonder is as good as dead, or something like that.
Yeah. That certainly sounds like him, but I think that's so true. And to this, I got started painting. I had the opportunity to get started in earnest about 15 years ago. And one of my primary objectives was to promote science, to promote that worldview. And insofar as that's where my portraiture got started. I was painting portraits of scientific figures and trying to promote that, and that kind of segued into the astronomical art. But now I think it's more important than ever that people are taking up that mantle and continuing that in this world of, I don't want to go down politics at all, but of this world of flexible truths. I think it's important to represent my work, at least, and my colleagues' works in a way that is a little bit more representative of reality. So,
Any other comments or questions? Or
I would have a question, another question, Simon, if you don't mind.
please.
Because I teach at an art and design school, and I have sort of students who do a Bachelor of Fine Arts in painting and printmaking, for instance, or a Bachelor of Fine Arts in graphic design. And if any of them sort of asked me, how do I become a space artist or an astronomy artist? What advice should I give them sort of during what to do, like during or after their BFA, their Bachelor of Fine Arts?
Well, if they want to join the International Association of Astronomical Artists, they can go to the website IAAA.org. And we have different membership categories, including student categories, and they can work closely with astronomical artists to hone their skill and maybe further their career. We also, because I'm the director of exhibitions, we obviously we hold exhibitions around the U.S. and hopefully around the world soon. And that's one avenue for them to go. On a purely individual artist basis, I would just recommend they explore. They go to ESA, they go to space institutes, they sit down with astronomers, they sit down with planetary scientists. I know here in Tucson for a long time, there was what they call asteroid lunch, which all the different, were blessed here in Tucson with a bunch of different institutes, astronomical institutes, and all the astronomers would get together for lunch and discuss their findings. And as an artist, I found it fascinating, not just from, a purely scientific viewpoint of what they were exploring, but on a personal level. Who were these people? What were their passions? What are their motivations? And that as purely an artist, that's what I would recommend. So
Thank you so much.
that was
Absolutely.
great.
Thank you.
Great question. Very good, because
Yeah.
we should always be concerned with the future generations.
absolutely.
So let me think. Maybe there's one or two other things I can think to ask. That was a good one, though. And it didn't even occur to me about how people get into the field, because
Yeah.
you have no clue. It's a young
N-
person. How to
No, I
who's
can.
there, and I should probably make sure this particular presentation gets out somewhere where art students are. I'll see if I
Yeah.
can manage that.
I think there's another question by Bob in the chat.
Oh, yes, I see. Yeah, Bob had a question. should I repeat it? He just wonders how much
please.
competition AI is to space artists.
I've had this argument. I think most of us have quite recently. So because space art and astronomical art is such a broad term, it applies differently to different artists. For the artists that worked with NASA or JPL or the Lunar Planetary Laboratory that would depict scenes of like, for example, there's the cometary flyby of Atlas, the interstellar comet flying by Mars right now. And our artists would typically be approached to create a scene for that for their news release. That has long been replaced by in-house artists who don't know what they're painting and aren't depicting the science properly, and now is being replaced by AI, who is marginally better science-wise, but still it's not depicting the science behind the article, so it's misrepresenting the science. And this has been a long problem that we've had as astronomical artists with the press. Other artists, such as artists that work in exoplanets, are also struggling right now. Whereas artists like Lucy West, a little more impressionistic artists, I don't think are getting impacted as hard. I can say this from my personal experience. When I got started painting as an artist and going to art shows and to galleries, if I was not there, I sold very little. If I was there and was able to express my enthusiasm for the subject, I would sell like crazy. So there is some truth to the statement that people don't buy art, they buy artists. And that being said, I don't think that's being impacted as much by AI art. To go back to an author I absolutely love, Yuval Noah Harari just wrote a wonderful book called Nexus on the future of AI and how it's impacting our world. And, you know, it's a tool. It's, yes, it's a tool with agency, but it's still a tool. And let's not forget that people like Thomas Jefferson warned Benjamin Franklin about the dangers of having a library. And there was in the past, when the Gutenberg Bible, when the printing press was invented, there was a huge uproar about, you know, material, you know, the knowledge being in the hands of the common man and how dangerous that was. So maybe that's for another argument, but that is my opinion, at least on AI art. So.
Well, I think that's very prescient and also informative of what's going on today, but also what may be coming. We'll probably have panels on this, I imagine, at the next TUSCon. I'm going to put in a note for people who are in Tucson. We have a locally fan-run 52nd anniversary science fiction convention coming up on November the 7th through the 9th. Are you going to be there, Simon?
Yeah, I usually attend, actually.
Oh,
I have
good.
friends who work it.
Good.
So.
And I will be there, and I will be doing a panel on Rossum's Universal Robots play from 1920, which our Planet Zoom players are producing in 4 episodes with animatics, you know, which is a form of AI. We have a tech whiz, Phil Nichols, in the UK, who teaches at Wolverhampton University. He's our effects guy. And we have a brand new translation from 2024 by Stepan Šimek. And he's in Portland, Oregon, and is a native Czech speaker. And the old translation they've used all these years was pretty bad, and it was done pretty crappily. And so now we'll see what we can do with this new translation, as well as Planet Zoom players. And I believe we're the only theatrical group that is on YouTube that records in Zoom and then does nothing but classic science fiction, mostly in the public domain on
Oh,
Zoom.
that's fantastic.
I didn't know if everybody here in our group knows about this. It's actually a twig off this branch. The Planet Zoom players were engendered from this group, and they've gone off into their own little orbit. You could just go to type in YouTube and Planet Zoom players, and you'll see their page. And we have 4 plays up now, and this will, I think, be number 5. So with that said, are there any other group or announcements people that are still with us want to make about your activities? How about you, Matthias, over in Qatar? Do you have any announcements?
Sort of about my own activities.
Yeah, or do you have a group or projects, whatever?
Sort of immediately I'm participating this week in like World Space Week that I think is starting today. So I'm doing a children's workshop at the Athureya Planetarium, which is like the Doha's planetarium. So that's what I will do on Monday. The topic is space is for everyone, or space is for all. Otherwise, I'm still working on Islamic ideas about extraterrestrial life. I think I'm scheduled next in the Zoom series. And sort of more long-term, my next project is a history of teaching science with science fiction. So that's my next book project.
And
thank you.
Aren't you our presenter next month here?
That's right.
I just remembered that. I think you are our next presenter, so you can follow up with how these things turned out and your continuing projects. Well, you know, with all you're doing and where you're doing it so far from the US, I think this will be on many levels a very enlightening talk. So we thank Simon, and when he goes into some dimensions of space, and each one of our speakers covers different dimensions. Have you noticed that? I noticed it. Multi-dimensional here. So anyone else that's still left want to talk about what you're doing? John, are you still here? I can't see who the few that are still here are.
I'm still here.
Okay, what projects are you working on, John, if you care to talk about them?
I'm not an artist. I just
Any project.
New project. I mean, I don't do science fiction art so much. I illustrated some tarot cards. I made some illustrations for tarot cards. That was fun. Maybe I should try doing some. You want to see what I'm working on right now? It's not really.
Look, this is free for all right now.
I like coloring. I like coloring, but I don't like buying coloring books. So I find things online, usually geometric things and stuff. So this is what I'm coloring right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
It's not really,
Very cool.
you know, I mean, I suppose if I added some fins to it or something, maybe it could be a ship or a space station or something. I don't know. I just kind of like trying to get the colors right to give it dimensionality. Is that what you say? Dimensionality?
Yes.
So I do things like that.
Well, we're all behind you on this project, so keep it
Thanks.
up, hang in there.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
if you can go that way, you know, by making it into something.
And you were laughing before about rocks and balls in space,
Mhm.
But when I was a kid, I mean, some of those things would just, 1970, Ringworld came out, and I was just blown away by the idea of it, and it just warped and twisted my imagination in new ways that was really totally inspiring. And it's just, you say, balls and rocks and ribbons in space, but it was so cool. I mean,
Well, we
Or
hope others will have their minds blown in similar ways, and we can get some of that enthusiasm back.
yeah.
Young
Absolutely.
people are all diverse.
That was just one book cover. That was just one, paperback book cover.
Yeah. No, that's where I got
But
started.
but in it you could see, if you look really close on the sun the inner surface of the ribbons facing the sun, you could see there were mountains and rivers, and the people in there didn't know that they were on a ribbon. It's kind of, I mean, it seems to be a recurring theme, like that Star Trek episode. I have, what is it? I've touched the sky or something. Remember that
For the
episode?
world is hollow. And I've touched
Thank you.
yeah.
Right.
Oh
Which is
dear.
that's kind of a variation on a Robert Heinlein story,
Yeah.
going back to like 1950 or something, where they're on a sleeper ship and they don't know they're on a sleeper ship, and someone tries to tell them, and it's disrupting the order. I mean, the whole allegory, of
Yeah.
someone, it was the same thing. What was that Flatland, right? That
Oh yeah. Yeah.
that the Pentagon sees an extra dimensional being who starts off as the most insignificant point and then has so many angles it's infinite, higher than the highest high priest, and then disappears again. And he tells people about it, so they put him in the loony bin.
Yeah. Kim Stanley Robinson, I think in the past 10 years wrote a book called Aurora. That is a very
Really?
a modern take on that
Oh, wow.
ship, people in a ship not realizing they're in a ship.
Right.
A very good novel.
Oh,
Highly
and that was a
recommend.
recurring theme with Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess the city and the stars, or
Yeah.
with it, there's
Yeah.
the future, and there's just two places of human habitation at the two poles, and not only do they not, and the rest is desert,
Yeah.
and they don't even know about each other's existence. And people, generation, have been taught to look inward and not think about what's outside, because all of it is desert. And one, unique individual who doesn't fit in explores the records going back centuries and millennia and discovers what happened to the earth, right?
It's interesting that all of this, those stories, and
Bye,
certainly
Matthias. Yeah.
very
well,
nice meeting
Sorry
you.
to
Thank you so
see you
much.
go.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Stanley Robinson, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Kim Stanley Robinson, Aurora.
Thanks.
But it's interesting that all these stories and the astronomical art really fundamentally boil down to finding what is our place in the universe as human beings. What does it mean to be a human being in the universe? And it's like that Renaissance woodcut with a person lifting the veil of the stars, trying to discover.
Right. So
You know?
that would be science fiction, right?
I have
You could call
a fast question. Do you think a lot of what religion is about is because people so fear death? Do you think having all this awe and about your place in the universe helps you not to fear death as much, personal death?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Well, I wasn't going to go here. So I am also an atheist. I take a very scientific worldview. In my youth, I explored religion quite vigorously, jumping from religion to religion, trying to discover the meaning of truth and scientific. I'm being very careful about this. In my own personal journey, I found that the best way to determine truth was through the scientific method and scientific inquiry. That being said, no, I don't. I don't think it has taken away a fear of death. I certainly still have a fear of death and a concern over it. It does, however, make me much more cognizant about my life while I'm living and how I'm conducting myself and how I'm living my life within the framework of a worldview that doesn't contain an afterlife. This is, for me, this is it. This is all there is, and that I'm going to make the best out of this precious gift, if you will, that the universe has given me. I did get into a heated argument once that I'm not sure I won about the efficacy of like being an evangelical atheist, if that's a thing, particularly to older people that are nearing the end of their life, trying to convert minds, and I'm not very much of a along that viewpoint to try to change people's minds. I think if they're going to present them with evidence and let them change their own minds, but that's a hard call. Do you want to take away, I think the argument was, do you want to take away religion, as harmful as it may be to society, from people who find comfort in it, in a belief of an afterlife? And it's a hard question. So I in my typical style, I hope I answered your question, and maybe answered it with more questions.
Well, I think that's the way to go. There's always.
Yeah.
There's a political economic component to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of pressure from the inheritors and the investors to keep the majority of the population in their little isolation chambers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I don't
Yeah.
think it's particularly scientific to tell people that they're alone against the world, that they're organic robots with kind of organic brains, and they're not part of anything, because I think a more scientific view is that there's this membrane of living tissue around this rocky ball that extends maybe from maybe a few hundred meters below the surface of the Earth out to the edge of the atmosphere, and we're all part of it. And
Right.
the whole idea that that to me is science. But some people would say, "Oh, that's."
Yeah.
And
No, I agree completely. And that's that scientific worldview. Our place in this. Where we are in all of this. What was it? Margolis, the scientist Margolis, Carl Sagan's first wife, came up with the Gaia hypothesis,
oh yeah,
which was really kind of downplayed at the time as pseudoscience.
right.
But the more we look at the interconnectedness of everything in the earth, we realize that everything is symbiotic here.
And you can make yourself physically and mentally and emotionally ill obsessing on the idea of your separateness. And that in some cases, you just have to stop, isolating yourself and allow yourself to receive sustenance, just because from the entirety. You don't know what the entirety is, but it's kind of like, it's a little like excessively Spock-ish to think that, it's almost like the Enterprise is in orbit around a new star, and Captain Kirk is saying, well, here we are at the edge of known space, and Spock is saying, well, no, we're not at the edge of anything. We're 5 days at maximum warp speed from Space Station 5, and we're all alone out here. We're like a mosquito buzzing around a ball of fire. That would be more of Spock's view, but somehow, they're both, it's not like one is right and the other's wrong, I guess, Spock certainly has his uses.
Yeah. There's actually been a lot of work done in evolutionary biology showing that our brains, for whatever reason, have evolved to separate us from everything else. And that leads into, the research that's being done in our consciousness right now. There's a lot of research as to what exactly our consciousness is in the context of our human brains and our meat machines, if you will. So it's a really interesting rabbit hole that you can go way, way down. And I would love to, at some future time, talk to you about it.
Yeah, and you're in Tucson, right? So
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
our paths will cross somehow.
Yeah.
Possibly you could send each other your emails before I shut it down. If one of you
Want to do
would.
that? I can send you my email.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, no, that'd be great. I'd love that.
And that way, oh, and by the way, save the chat before we shut down, because there were other books mentioned and names of artists. And how do you do that? Let me see. I'm going to go into chat now. Where's my chat? My chat's under more.
Yep.
Okay. And on my screen, there's 3 dots at the top, and if you click those, that will save chat. Let me see.
So I'm just wondering, Simon, do you
Oh,
have?
that's not it. Wait,
this is
must be at the bottom. I'm looking for this thing now. How do I save
I'm just
chat?
wondering, Simon, do you ever have shows at Tucson art galleries, or?
Well, I do. Since the pandemic, things have slowed down a lot. But we had a show that I was very, very pleased with at Flandero Planetarium called The Heritage of Astronomical Art in Arizona, that we were able to get some really rare pieces. And I'm sorry I didn't plug this earlier. The Lunar Planetary Society, or Lunar Planetary Laboratory at the University of Arizona, every year holds an art show called the Art of Planetary Sciences. And their exhibition this year is from February 27th to March 1st next
Oh, is
year.
it still open for entries? You might mention.
It is. You can, yeah, you can go in there anytime you want to. The lunar library upstairs is by appointment only, I think
Mhm.
now.
But I
So,
mean, can we still submit art to the?
oh yeah, absolutely. It's the art show, the submissions are open until December 31st. And if
Oh, that's-
anybody needs a
oh,
link to that, just let me know, but you can just look up the Art of Planetary Sciences on
Oh.
Google and it'll lead you right
I
there.
get on
It's a
their
wonderful
website.
show that was started by Dr. Jamie Millarno in 2015. Jamie has now gone on and she's working as one of the principals for the Europa Clipper mission. So
She's at JPL now, right?
she's at JPL, yeah, at JPL, continuing to do art there as well,
Mhm.
which is
No, she did
fantastic.
those laser things, didn't she? Where you bit into the pages with laser and it
She
was
did
like,
her,
yeah.
she took her thesis that was on craters on the moon
Uh-huh.
and laser cut the thesis, which was substantial. It's like 500 pages thick. Laser cut it with the craters that she was talking about
Wow.
in her
Maybe
thesis.
we should have her come and speak. I just thought
Oh,
of it.
please, absolutely.
Yeah,
She
Jamie
is phenomenal.
Malone. I know. Okay, Jamie. Can you spell her last name? Because if I try to look her up, it might be difficult. Do you know?
All right, I'm probably going to butcher it. Molerno, Molrno. I've got her information and I can send her your
Oh,
way.
please do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll try to get her too. I'll just send you one follow-up with a couple asks.
Oh, absolutely. So.
So, thank you
Yeah,
so
because
much.
she takes a much more scientific approach to the art, and oddly enough, a much looser approach to the interpretation of astronomical art, which I find refreshing. Some people find it, but you know,
Well, everybody's, have their own
yeah.
preferences. So I,
What do you mean by looser interpretation?
Well, you know, as a member of the IAAA, and I've had plenty of arguments with other members. We really try to remain true to the science, whatever we're doing. Whereas, like in the Art of Planetary Sciences, that definition is a lot looser. So it's more, you see a lot of work that's just kind of inspired by.
So you mean like fantasy, sword and sorcery in space?
Well, not necessarily fantasy, but certainly fantasy within the realm of science fiction. There's an artist who does exobiology, phenomenal artist. I can't remember their name right now, and if I do remember it, I'll post it. Just intricate pencil drawings, very much in the style of Wayne Barlow, if you were familiar with him. Yeah, just incredible stuff. Or you'll see some Star Trek pieces sneak in to that art show as well. Whereas,
Well,
as
what about Greek mythology, centaurs and griffins and stuff? Well, but
you'll
the
see
funny
that
thing
too.
about that is that
Yeah.
if instead of terraforming other planets or geoforming, what do you call it? Maybe it would be simple to genetically engineer ourselves to adapt to those environments.
Oh,
To
absolutely.
withstand
What was it?
tremendous cold, 70-degree
Yeah.
below zero cold, and
Yeah. David Brin and his Uplift comes to mind. Uplift
uh,
series. Yeah. Yeah.
oh, so it's a series. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, the Uplift is, yeah, brilliant. Or more recently, Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of the Mind series is, if you're into evolutionary biology, that is the science fiction novel of all science fiction.
What's that? What's that
So,
one called?
Adrian Tchaikovsky,
What's the
Children of
name
the
of it?
Mind.
What of the mind?
Children of the
Children,
Mind.
children of thought. Sorry.
Children of the Mind, Children of Memory. I can't remember the third one, but
You know what I found very interesting, in a way, more interesting than the original, which is blasphemy. But Brian Herbert, his whole prequel
oh yeah.
series, it's astounding. It's epic. And it's so complexly interwoven, and it makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas, the original, I get the feeling that, Frank Herbert fell into the trap that Frank Baum fell into, that nobody wanted anything else. He tried writing other books and nobody wanted it. So he was
Yeah.
forced to keep writing sequels to do, and I think he started really hating it, hating the fans, you know.
From an artist's perspective, I've fallen into that trap, and it's hard not to. You know, it's hard not to seek validation from people who are willing to pay you money for things.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and
It's like this. It's like the backdrop of that movie or that Stephen King novel, Misery.
yeah,
Or, you know,
yeah,
no more misery novels. I don't think
yeah.
so.
You know, this is one of the primary reasons I'm taking a break from painting right now. Is it became I was following the money, frankly, and you know, that's I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing, but at the same time, it's a trap because then you get pigeonholed in a certain style and you don't grow anything as an artist anymore, I think. So
I had a friend who was a painter, and she did abstract expressionism, German abstract, and she loved doing this, right? And it was totally abstract, but she spent, you know, hundreds of hours on, you know, getting all these overlapping layers and things that drew your eye into depths and hidden passageways and stuff. And every once in a while, she's, oh, I got to make money now. So she would like draw a face on it. She would take black ink and draw a face on it. It would sell. I mean, like that. It would sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars.
That's pretty much that's what the portraiture is. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Fortunately, I still enjoy it, so it hasn't become tedium. But I need to run right now. Thank you so much, John.
Yes.
My email is simonkrieger@gmail.com.
Simon Krieger, all lowercase, one word, no space.
Yep.
Okay.
At
I was about
gmail.com.
to
Really
call
easy to find.
because we're really making this a marathon meeting, but it was so interesting. So
thanks.
Thanks, Simon, and
absolutely. Thank you,
John, and everyone.
So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.